So we are seeing some good indicators coming out of the month of December. One of those is that money supply growth is on the up. Banks are lending again. Retailers are willing to issue credit. The consumer is trusted in Namibia. Explain to us this changing tide, because it's not really the case in countries like South Africa, for instance.
That's right. I think what we can see in Namibia is very abnormal actually at the moment. We've got quite low interest rates. By Namibian standards, extremely low, record low in fact. So we have very favorable credit conditions for the country, the best that we've ever seen. However, as we all know, the world is going through some very tough economic times. I think a recession looks highly likely in Europe and so on. So yes, it's very unexpected that Namibia is doing relatively well. As we say, credit conditions are very favorable. People are taking out a significant amount of credit at the moment. Credit growth has been significant. So yeah, it's obvious that this money is being put to good use, and we're seeing significant significant growth by international standards. By Namibian standards, it's slightly below what we would hope for and what we would expect, but it's still, it's Europe would give its left arm for growth like that at the moment, certainly.
Give us a sense of the power of the Namibian consumer. We're told that over 60% of South Africa's GDP relies on consumer activity. What are the sort of trends in Namibia when we look at this kind of credit growth? To what extent are ordinary Namibians going to be the drivers of this growth?
Certainly to some extent they will be. Although in reality, there will be a huge amount of that growth which is driven very, very much by the large industry in the country. The mining sector, for example, we're likely to see quite significant growth from the mining sector. So, I think that, and construction industry and so on. So yes, it will be partly driven by Namibians. It will be partly driven by your average Joe on the street, but it will also be largely driven by a large industry in the country.
Okay, so with that huge corporate expansion, it explains the trends then for higher corporate lending. Which are the areas where we're going to see growth? You've just mentioned sort of key sectors, mining for instance, but where is it that investors have an appetite for?
Well, mining is really the big one at the moment. We also expect to see large increases in the manufacturing industry. We'll probably also see quite significant increases in construction. I think the estimate's around 8%. That's quite substantial, obviously above the average, so pulling the average up nicely. But yeah, I think that really manufacturing and mining will probably be amongst the biggest.
Obviously, what's going to drive a lot of African economies in the first quarter of the year are higher commodity prices, as we're seeing them buoyant at the moment with global jitters. Will resources be the story of Namibia's growth, or are we likely to see the rise of other sectors like manufacturing, for instance? Yes, certainly some minerals and things will play a huge role, but we also expect to see manufacturing and so on contributing significantly. The considerable efforts by government at the moment are to diversify the economy. At the moment, we are very reliant on a few sectors, and that's obviously not very stable long term, as you can see with the likes of Botswana, where they saw a significant decline in growth in 2009. In fact, they actually contracted very significantly in 2009 based on the fact that their economy wasn't very diverse. It was reliant on minerals like diamonds. Ours is similarly so. As well as this, if we see commodity price increases, that doesn't really do much for some of the big problems Namibia faces, like unemployment. Yeah. Prices alone do not really, one wants quantity, an increase in quantity rather than an increase in price. That's the type of growth that we are looking for, because that is what creates jobs and so on. I'm glad you've mentioned the issue of jobs, because it's a bugbear for many of the bigger economies in the sub-region. What is government saying, their efforts to create labor-intensive industries? Yes, government is doing its very best to create a lot of jobs. We have the targeted intervention program on employment and economic growth. Growth and unemployment are probably the two biggest challenges that Namibia faces. Government's putting over 15 billion Namibian dollars into this. This is very significant for Namibia. I mean, Namibia is a very small economy, but in terms of our economy, that is a huge amount of money. It's being put into a number of short-term programs, a public sector works program to try and create some short-term jobs, but it's also being put into longer-term things, trying to address issues in education, trying to trying to address some of the structural issues in the economy, trying to encourage small and medium enterprise and so on. So yes, there are significant efforts in place to address our unemployment. As you say, it's a big problem for the region. However, Namibia really seems to be holding the torch with that at the moment, in that we have over 50%. Now that is exceptionally high. I think very, very few countries in the region, nay, the world, have such high unemployment. So yes, it's a huge challenge.
But in all fairness, you've also got a very small population, and we need to keep that into perspective. For investors of other kinds, the attractiveness of Namibia, I mean, we were talking about interest rates, and we've seen inflation coming in at around 6.1%, the benchmark interest rates being kept steady at 6%. So the real returns of anybody coming into Namibia at this stage is something to question. Where are the opportunities? Where are the advantages? What's the perception for the investor?
Well, I think investors here can make a lot of money if they're investing it in production activities. Money invested in savings won't derive huge returns here, or any returns here. In fact, we've got negative real interest rates. But invested in production activities, I think you can see vast returns. That's why we have mining sectors, mining companies from all over the world flocking here. That's why we see significant foreign direct investment in Namibia, is because it is a very good, relatively safe country in which to invest, where you can derive significant returns. The risk to reward ratio is probably one of the more favorable in the world at the moment. So I think it's obviously, if people want to bring money in here to get returns on their investment, they're not going to do that. Well, at the same time, we see today that Germany has now sold bonds at negative interest rates, so people are really not looking for huge returns on their money at the moment. This is of course for savings, not for production activities. But we see people here, huge amounts of money is coming into the country at the moment, far more than we would have expected, I suppose.